no matter what I was doing, he would be there. He would be curious, and he would want to know what's in it for him to a certain point. But at the same time, we had a bond. And there's an old saying that a dog is a man's best friend. And I posted on social media about my dog Chevy yesterday morning. Yesterday morning he was fine. I got up. I said, let's go outside. And like we normally do, every morning. And he got up yesterday morning. He was chipper. He was fine. He was happy. He was the typical Chevy. He sleeps at the foot of my bed. And first thing he does is he would stretch across the bed toward the section that he would get off the bed, and I always help him off the bed because the bed is a little higher than a typical bed. And but he was always stretching. He loved to stretch. He was very muscular. He's a bulldog, actually. And you've seen many videos of Chevy, and many times you've seen Chevy in my videos on YouTube. Beautiful dog. Black with white trim. Always looked like he was wearing a tuxedo. One of the kindest, most beautiful, kind-hearted dogs you will ever meet. Everyone who met Chevy loved Chevy. And again, it's hard for me to talk about this today. He got up yesterday morning. Everything was fine. And as I normally do, I'll let him outside. I'll put the water on the boiler, and I'll start boiling some water to make coffee. And I got my coffee made. I sat down, decided to drink my coffee and start my day. And I thought, okay, Chevy didn't come back around. Where's Chevy? So I went outside, walked around the barn. I didn't see Chevy anywhere. I said, where's Chevy? And then I walked on around, and I seen him laying down behind a chair. And I said, come on, Chevy, let's get something to eat. He didn't look toward me. He stayed in his laying down position. His eyes were open. He looked normal. He didn't move. He just laid there with his big floppy lips on his front paws, looking forward. He didn't even look over at me when I said, come on, Chevy. So I walked around the back of the chair, and I kind of picked up on him, and I noticed he was just not himself. He was in a daze. He was not, it was like he was looking through everything. It wasn't like he was alert, yet he seemed to be okay. I checked inside of his mouth and noticed that his mouth was cold. And his gums were light pink, which usually means that he has some internal bleeding. And I thought, did he get down into the highway? Did he get hit? What's going on here? And I brought him inside. I checked all of his muscles, checked all of his bones. He walked, actually, out to the barn. He walked into the barn, and he didn't eat anything. I noticed he didn't want anything to eat. He just wanted to lay down. And then I took him back into the home and started calling vets, trying to find one that the vet was present. There was no vet in our little town here that was present. There's a veterinarian clinic, but the veterinarian was not on duty that day. They said to call down to Andrews, get him in down there, which that's a good almost 45 minutes to an hour away. I called down there, and they couldn't get him in until hours later. I called a neighbor, asked for advice, and he gave me a name of a clinic over here toward Cherokee, North Carolina, near the reservation. And so I headed there immediately, loaded Chevy up. Chevy got up on the passenger seat of the car, looked out the window. I could tell he wasn't his normal self, but he was still moving around. He would lay down for a while. He would move where he was looking out the window to the passenger side window, and sometimes he'd look out the front, and sometimes he'd just lay down with his head on the console. Very normal, but slower. Not the normal Chevy. And I just kept talking to him. I said, buddy, stay with me. I said, let's get you to the doctor and let's find out what's going on with you. And so I got him to we arrived at the Cherokee Animal Care Clinic, and got in there. The doctor there is one of the best. Dr. Robbie. She is absolutely one of the best. Everyone loves Dr. Robbie. Everyone I've heard talk about her loves her work, are impressed, and very positive about her reputation as a very good veterinarian around this area. So she took him back. Of course, I had to fill out a lot of paperwork and do what needed to be done there. And their first suspicion was that Chevy had been poisoned. They asked questions about antifreeze, and which I grew up on a farm, and I know that there's some evil people out there, and there's people out there that if they want to kill a dog that is a neighbor's dog or what have you, they may put out some antifreeze. If dogs are attracted to antifreeze, it has a certain taste to it, certain smell to it, sweet. And if a dog eats or drinks antifreeze, then it will poison the dog. Their organs will start shutting down, and they will have blood in their urine and start bleeding internally. And there is no way to turn that kind of poisoning around. So they did pull his urine and in a sample in a syringe, and they brought it out there to me, and it was filled with blood, and they did some tests on the urine thinking that it might have been antifreeze poisoning, and it was not. It was not antifreeze poisoning. It wasn't poisoning. The tox screen came back. They did lab works extremely fast. They also drew blood and checked for other things, thinking that if it wasn't poisoning, it might have been some type of acute diabetic reaction, which I've never known of Chevy having any diabetic issues, but his urine did show high glucose levels, and that was a concern. But when they tested his blood, that was not the case. His pancreatic numbers were out of whack. It wasn't good there, but at the same time, they realized that he was septic. Things were not going well. He was bleeding internally, and his blood was extremely thick. And they were giving him medication to try to thin it, as well as other things. And they had him in a bed inside the clinic, and they had warm air blowing on him, trying to build up his temperature, because his temperature was about 10 degrees lower than what a dog should be. You got to understand, Chevy is my partner. He is my companion. He is my buddy. He's my pal. He's my sidekick. He has been with me for 9 years. Every day, all day. If I go into the bank, he goes into the bank with me. He goes with me everywhere I go. Every time my car cranks up, starts, he gets in that car. He goes with me everywhere I go. Unless I'm flying somewhere, he is with me. And so the doctor's diagnosis was, really, she didn't know what was causing this, but they knew that he was dehydrated. And I know that if they were saying he was dehydrated, it wasn't because he wasn't drinking water. He drinks plenty of water. In fact, yesterday morning, as soon as I let him out of the house, he went down to the lake. First thing he does is he goes for a little short wade and swim at the edge of the water of the lake. I have a private lake here on the farm at the homestead. When I found him, his feet were a little muddy and wet. He's a happy dog. He loves the freedom of the country. He was not dehydrated because of not having water. And but she was sitting in the lobby with me telling me that they're going to have to transfer him to a hospital to keep him for the weekend, to load him up with antibiotics because of him being septic, and to also build his blood and build his hydration. All this was going on. I'm sitting there saying, do whatever you have to do. I want my dog to make it. And while she's sitting there telling me what they're going to do, and me agreeing, and I'm just, all my hopes are in him being okay. And then she gets up, she jumps up from the seat. She's sitting in the seat next to me as we're talking in the lobby at the veterinary clinic. She jumps up and she runs. She had a look on her face where she had seen one of her nurses call for her. So she ran, which I didn't know if it was in reference to Chevy, my dog, or someone else's animal. I had no clue. But she took off, just ran. And then in a couple of minutes, nurse came out and said, Mr. Welch, can you come in here? And I knew it had to be Chevy then. So I went in there, and they said there was another dog that was in the clinic. Chevy got up from his bed because his bed was on the floor level. He got up from his bed, and he walked a few steps across the room, and they led him back to his bed. And when they had gotten him back to his bed, immediately he passed away. And the doctor said in her opinion, he threw a clot. And that clot could have gone to his brain, it could have gone to his lungs, could have gone to his heart. But he died instantly. He didn't seem like he was in pain. He didn't seem like he was under a lot of torment. But he was not even scared either. I didn't see fear. I just seen he was a little out of it, which I'm glad. And I hope he didn't have the pain. And again, on the farm, life is part of the farm. Death is part of the farm. Chevy was part of the family. He wasn't just part of the farm. I mean, he has been with me from everywhere from Key West down to the very tip of Florida, the lowest point you can imagine, all the way up north. He's been with me everywhere you can imagine. He's got more miles on him from in driving and touring, and I can be bush hogging. I can be on the tractor and make many laps around the pastures, as you know how many laps it takes just to bush hog, and it takes days just to cut the grass. He will not miss a single lap. He'll go every lap. If I'm driving around one of my back roads here on the farm, going through the forest, because I have a road that goes around the bottom half of the property that goes through the forest, he's going to go every step of the way. Most likely he's in front. I'm following him because he wants to lead the way. Him and the rooster will fight. He's a great guard dog, but he's not a fighter in the sense that he loves to fight other dogs. He never did. If he ever got in a fight with another dog, usually he'd wind up being scarred up because he just wasn't a very good at fighting back. But he loved kids. He loved people. Everybody loves Chevy. But how do you deal with that? I'll tell you how I deal with it. And it hasn't been good. Not over the last 24 hours anyway. It's been rough. And I can't tell you how many people have reached out to share their condolences, because Chevy was not just my dog, he was an icon. Chevy was known by so many people. I got him in the very beginning of 2014 from my son that got him at the end of 2013. He was born in October 2013, so this month was his birthday of 9 years old. This farm here, we had Jeff's picnic and bonfire party in 2014 when I'd come back from New Zealand and Bangkok and Dubai and Australia. I was on a business trip, and as soon as we got back, I brought Chevy here to the farm, and it was his first trip to the farm in 2014 in February. And it was, I have so many pictures of Chevy during that first trip here. And so many times he has taken trips here to me when we didn't live here on the farm, but we lived in Georgia or Florida. And we came here to the North Carolina farm and had such great times with Chevy. Now he lives here, and he died here. He died here in the Appalachian Mountains. We started a pet cemetery here for the homestead, for the Welch family homestead. Excuse me, I'm choked up. I've been choked up. I feel like I'm singing bass when I'm talking because my voice is messed up, because I've been grieving. He has been the best dog I could have ever had. Blessed. Blessed. I hope that I have been just as good to him and for him as he was to me. Everyone wants to know, when are you going to get another dog? Or, like, it's too early to even think about that. I probably will. He's not my first dog. He's not my first dog that has died. But this has been the one that I probably got closest to. Chevy was there over the last several years when I went through things that he helped me. He helped me get through. I mean, to make a statement like, if it hadn't been for Chevy, I don't know if I could have gotten through some of the things I've gotten through. I don't know if that's an exaggeration or a fact. But I do know this. Because of him, I was able to get through it as good as I have gotten through it. And for those of you who are listening, this is not my typical YouTube video. I'm not the only person. I'm not trying to be selfish here and say that I am. I'm not the only person that's lost a pet. I'm not the only person that's lost a family member. But this has been just as hard as losing a human family member to me. And some of you who are listening to me right now, you've gone through losses, whether it's losses of the grief that you go through because you've gone through a divorce, or you've lost a child. You've lost a parent, a grandparent, a brother, a sister, a spouse. Whatever the reason for the loss, there's that grieving process that you go through that is healthy. In my degree is psychology, and I've spoken about this a lot, but at the same time, when I go through it myself, I also realize I can hear my own words of advice coming my way, to take my time and to grieve. It's a healthy thing to hurt at times. In the same way that I can hear my own voice give me advice, because I've given advice to others so many times, you would not believe how many times today that I'll be walking, or I'll be starting this tractor, or I'll be driving down the road with my car, and I'll be sitting in one of my chairs, I'll be opening a door, I'll be going into the barn, I'll be wherever I'm at, and it's almost as if I can feel Chevy next to me, because he's always been there, at least for the last 9 years. And it will take a while before it gets to the point where I don't look over there for him. It will be a while before I'll get to the point that I don't move in coordination with wondering if I'm going to step on his paws, or if I'm going to trip over him, or if I'm going to hear him bark if somebody's driving up, or I'm going to be careful in the bed that I don't roll over and he's there when he's not. It's almost like people talk about when they have a finger cut off, that after they've had that finger cut off, that appendage cut off, or that hand cut off, that they can still feel it as if it's still there. I feel that way about Chevy as I've gone through today, because I know that when I'm driving my tractor, I'm cautious. I don't want to run over him. I don't want him falling under the tire. And I'm always looking out for him. I'm seeing if he's in front of me or behind me. I'm doing that today, and he's not even here for me to check on. But I will say this. With the Welch Family Homestead Cemetery, for our pet cemetery, we are going to fix it up nice. Right now it's very crude. It's going to look nice. It's going to be like a little park area where we can sit and think, maybe read, or maybe just meditate. The first pet that was buried there was my daughter's little dog named Ollie. I buried it there just a few months ago. I did not think that it would be this soon that I would be burying Chevy there. I knew that Chevy would eventually be buried there, but I had no clue that it would be this early. I thought I'd have him for several years to come. Again, this is just his 9th birthday this month. And someone asked, how old is that in dog years? 9 times 7, 7 years to 1 is dog years. 9 times 7 is 63. He turned 63 this month. I will turn 63 in 3 months. We're the same age when he passed. What a blessing he was. And what a blessing he will continue to be, because he left a mark. So anyway, saying all that, if you have any losses like this in your life, don't be afraid to cry. Even if you're a man, I'm one of those men that don't have a feminine side to him, but yet at the same time, if you touch my heart, like Chevy has touched my heart, I will. Anyway, I bless you. Blessings to you and your family from Welch Family Homestead. I hope that this little video somehow touches a lot of people. God bless you. And may Chevy rest in peace.